Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of Club Junkie, and hopefully you're having a great week. It's getting closer to holiday. Can't believe it's already December. Excuse me. Already December. It's wild. This year has gone by way too fast. Um, I don't know what I don't even know what I'm doing. It's crazy to think that we're basically 29 days away from next year. So from 2022, which is absurd. It's absolutely crazy, but this year's just flown by, and regardless of what's happened this year, it seems like it's just been a fast year. So, before we get into today's episode, just want to let you know this episode brought to you by Titleist and Titleist T Series irons. True distance is more than just a number. Every T Series iron is designed for maximum performance in three key factors for any approach: distance, dispersion, angle of descent. Your authorized Titleist fitter will help you find the combination of T-Series models to unlock your ability to not only hit it longer, but to hit it closer too. Visit Titleist.com and find a fitter near you. The new T-Series irons, big fan. Really liked basically the whole set T100, T100S, T200, T300. I mean, all four have been really solid. I'm debating, whether I go T100S or what. I think 100S might be the way I go, but the 100s are solid. I mean, the 200s are really good. I don't think you can go wrong with one of the T-Series irons this year. So, again, Titleist.com. Check out all the specs, everything for those. And, hopefully everybody's having a good week. I, unfortunately, have been stuck in the land of snow and ice and all that because, unfortunately, it's just it's one of those things about living in the north that pretty much it ends at some point, and it has been today is going to be like a warm day. It's going to be like 50. It's going to or close to it, so it'll be pretty nice out. But unfortunately, I'm taking my wife and I are taking my daughter to the Polar Express here in town, and I will not be golfing today. It's one of those where unfortunately I have work to do, and like I said, taking our daughter to the Polar Express to meet Santa and all that stuff is a little higher priority. So no golf, unfortunately, today, but it's okay. Hopefully in the next few weeks I'll have some opportunities to go play. I know we're still kind of getting into launch season. There's a few trips that I will probably be going on for new launch product, and typically those I'll at least get to hit balls in the range, if not play a little golf. So I'm excited for that, and those type of things are always fun to do, and see some people. They're always in warmer climates, so it'll be a good time. But anyway, my episode today or whatever. I mean, it's so weird to like my episode today, but I want to talk a little bit because I know for half the country golf is for the most part done. We're all going to head indoors to domes or heated ranges or simulator bays, whatever the case may be. And that's how we kind of cope with getting through the winter. But it's one of those things where a lot of people I've got recently a lot of questions, and I think it's because as things wind down, a lot of questions about starting off your own little kind of tinkering build shop, whatever you want to call it. And I think a lot of that does for me spark because this weekend or last weekend I spent a good majority of the weekend down in my basement, kind of putting together my shop version. Who knows, 3.0, 4.0. For this house, it's probably version 3.0 that I'm putting together. So, but over the years, I've come from small little things to now what I've put into now. A great friend of mine took the time, his time, his labor, his skill, put together some amazing cabinets and drawers for my kind of latest version 3.0 here of my shop, and I'll get some photos of it on Instagram if you follow me at Club Junkie Pod on Instagram. I'll have some more photos. I put some photos for some in my stories as I was putting everything together, and it's turning out really good. It's really looking nice. I'm able to, like I said, have cabinets and drawers now where I can store tools and store components and things like that. And it makes it just look a lot nicer. It's a lot more organized. It's kind of a thing that I've wanted to do for a while, but I just I just didn't do it. And part of it was the cost, part of it was, not getting exactly what I wanted and things like that. And, like I said, a good friend of mine said, he's got a huge woodworking shop and does some, just does stuff for a hobby and is very good and has, the tools and the skill and the know-how how to build this stuff. And built me pretty much said, draw up what you want, sketch it up, and we'll put it together. We'll make it a reality. And he did, and he did a heck of a job. So if you were following along my stories, you saw the kind of the process of me kind of putting everything in. I went and picked everything up. We cut some of the top workspace sheets and all that when I was over there, put on the hardware, and then I brought it home and started installing it. So it's pretty close to, I wouldn't say it's done, it's pretty close to done. Everything's leveled off. The tops are all put on there, and now it's just a matter of kind of like just mounted my vices, my kind of gripping area, and then I put on some wood on the back for kind of we'll call it a backsplash, but just a section there to stop anything from rolling off, and also to have a few things mounted on the wall. There's not going to be a ton. Most of it is going to be hidden away, but it's really something that turned out really, really good. And before that, I was really looking at doing like a kitchen cabinet, like going to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, Menards, whatever, and buying like kitchen cabinets, just kind of like unfinished ones. Maybe I just, paint them white or gray or whatever in my garage, but getting a bunch of those because they're all modular, like pre-made, whatever, nothing crazy, kind of cheap, and putting them in there. And it's not a bad idea. It actually, it probably, it would have looked really good, all that, but they're really expensive per piece, and they weren't quite as, I don't think they were quite as tall as I wanted, so I would have had to put a little riser on the bottom to get them up there. And like I said, the cost on them was like thousands of dollars, where, like I said, I was very fortunate to have a friend of mine who's, basically charging me more for material than anything else. So, this is going to be this is far cheaper than what it was going to be. But I was going to do the kitchen cabinet route and do that. But then also too, it ended up being what I would have to get, or what I'd be not limited to, but in your space, I only have so much space down here. I would have been limited to, just cabinets, and the drawers would have been small, and the things they wouldn't have been as functional for golf. I mean, they're great for a kitchen, but for golf, they really wouldn't have been as functional. And to go, to my buddy and say, hey, I want a drawer that holds shafts. Like I've got a drawer that it's like 40, I want to say it's 46 inches, like on the nose, so an uncut shaft will fit right in there. But I've got a pull-out drawer that I can store wood shafts and stuff like that in, and it's super deep. I mean, you could fit a ton of shafts in there. But I've got one for shafts. I've got it's made that a dozen balls will fit in there, whether laying flat down. You can stack a couple up, whether you put them on their side. They fit perfectly. I've got a drawer full of driver heads and stuff, and those all, the drawer's deep enough where everything fits, and, that kind of stuff, you can kind of custom do, well, like I did, where if you go and buy some pre-made cabinets, you may have to kind of figure out how that stuff is going to work. But this turned out really good. And then, having my custom right in the center pull-out double garbage can setup is just awesome. So every week I can just pull a bag out of there and of old grips and crap or whatever, throw it away, and I'm no longer just throwing stuff into a cardboard box and waiting a couple weeks for it to build up and then somehow getting it into a garbage bag and taking it outside. It's like it's so much nicer. But yeah, like I said, I'll post some more photos now that it's getting closer to done on my Instagram, so you can kind of see what it now looks like. And I wish I would have had. I think I had pictures of it before that I deleted off my phone because I'm an idiot, so I could have posted like before and afters, but of course I'm an idiot, and I think I deleted those photos. So, but hey, what are you going to do? But I get a lot of questions though about people who want to start their own shop or want to start their own space, and what they need, and how expensive is it, and all that stuff to get into tinkering with your own clubs. And I love it because I love seeing people get excited about working on their own clubs, and taking pride in that, and honestly a lot of times it makes those clubs more special if you're the one who put a new shaft in that putter, or you put new grips on your own clubs and all that. It it tends to, make you like those clubs a little bit more and appreciate them a little bit more. And it also can save you some money in the long run. So all that stuff is fun. And I mean, I got into golf WRX back in 2006 because I wanted to learn I wanted to regrip. Well, I mean, I loved golf clubs and all that, and then I really got into wanting to start working on my own clubs, and I started with regripping and all that, and I would dive into the forums and ask questions and see who was there who could give me some help and some tips and all that stuff, and I ended up, regripping my own clubs, and now I have a whole shop in the basement, which I can do pretty much everything but like really grind wedges, and honestly, that is just a really expensive endeavor, and I don't grind enough wedges that it really matters nowadays. There's so many grinds on stock wedges that I don't really need to. I don't get a lot of requests for it from buddies and stuff, so I haven't gone down that road. That's the one thing I really, I can't do. The rest of it I've got down here where I can. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about starting your own shop or starting your own space to tinker. I mean, it's one of those things you got to start somewhere. I think a lot of guys, the first thing is getting into, I'm going to start regripping my clubs, and I want to kind of put together a little space and all that. And that's a great place to start because it's something easy. It's something where, the cost of screwing up is very, very minimal. And you don't need a ton of expense and a ton of space, and you don't need a world-class tour van shop to do some grips. I mean, really, you don't need a tour van shop. You don't need that for any of this stuff. But I mean, I was working out of a garage and my own garage in a really crappy. I think my first setup was at my parents' house. In my dad's garage or my parents' garage, they had my dad had like a little workbench, and like L-shaped workbench, and the one back side of the garage, to normal 2-car garage. And he had a vise on there, and I bought some stuff and started regripping, and that's where I started. And then when I moved out of my parents' house, I basically built a little, I think it was 4x4 workbench. It was out of 2x4s and some particle board, and built that, and found, and it worked great. Bought a vise, tossed it on there, and started doing my own grips and all that. It moved into doing some reshafting out of that setup. That setup was terrible because half the bench was just absolutely wasted. But it worked for what I needed, and at the time I didn't know any better, and that's what I did. So, like I said, I wouldn't mind, throwing a little knowledge towards people in terms of starting, of things that they can kind of look for and all that, because, like I said, that's what I did, and, I made some mistakes, and I learned from them, and, now I am where I am. But like I said, starting out sometimes is a little daunting, and you kind of don't know what to do, and you don't want to make a ton of mistakes, and I totally get that. So talking about today is kind of starting your own space, and what you need, what to look for, kind of what it's going to cost, because things are a little different, and the biggest thing now is the biggest thing now is what are you going to like? Are you going to build your own workbench? Do you have a workbench? Do you have something? That is a big factor in the cost. I'm not really going to get into that because everybody's going to be a little different. Some people are going to have a space. You may have a garage that already has a workbench. You have a workspace from other hobbies, things like that. And then other people, you may have to build something from scratch. So it really depends on what you have. But let's start about kind of talking, doing your own shop, and we'll first talk about kind of regripping. Maybe I'll do another episode on reshafting, because then you get into a little more parts, and it's harder to. I mean, you can calculate the price, but it takes a little more to calculate the price of it and all that. But the first thing, so say you want to set up your own shop for regripping your own clubs. You live in the northern part of the country like me. The year's over. You know that next year, the grip's a little worn. You put a few rounds on them. It's time for something new. You want to try your hand at it. Or, you're just one of those, hey, you've seen some new grips out from, one of the manufacturers. You want to try them. And, you went out and bought some. It's actually really a simple thing to do. Once you do it a couple times, it really is, it's not a hard process. It's one of those things where, you can save yourself a couple bucks. I mean, I know when you go to a shop, people charge you, they charge you for the grip, and they charge you a little labor to put on, which is totally acceptable. It's their time and their labor, but you can kind of save yourself a little of that doing it at home. So if you want to do grips at home, the first thing you got to do is you got to find a space. And space-wise, you need a little more space than you think, because when you go to put a driver, or even a wedge for that matter, but a driver especially, I mean, you're talking about a club that's 45 inches long. And when you clamp it into, some type of vise or whatever, typically half of it is going to be on one side and half of it's going to be on the other side of your vise. So in terms of a space, you definitely have to have enough room where not only can you stand behind it and put the grip on, which is probably, a 4 foot to maybe 5 foot section. I mean, to where you want to stand. I mean, you don't want to wedge yourself in and be up against a wall and trying to fit, get a grip on. Having kind of an open space where you have 4 to 5 feet where you can kind of move around a little bit would be like the minimum. And then on the other side of that, though, you can't be right up against a wall because you're going to need, say 20 to 30 inches on the other side where that club is going to stick out because, the thing's 45 inches long. I mean, some people might be even a little longer, or maybe even slightly shorter. But you can't have a vise that's right against the wall or 2 feet away from the wall because, or less than 2 feet away from the wall because there's going to be a lot of club that sticks out. So you want to look for a space that you're going to have enough room to have a driver that can move around. So if you're looking in your basement or your garage or a spare room in your house or a spare spot in your house or whatever, you definitely want some space. You need wherever you're going to mount basically your vise, you need a couple feet in front of that, say 3 feet, and you're going to need 4 to 5 behind it to kind of have enough space to work. So like I said, when you're looking around your basement, whatever, if you have some little like nook, in the basement, but it's really tight, maybe, take a driver in there, see how you can move it around, see how it's going to fit. Because the last thing you want to do is kind of build this spot and then get in there, slap a driver and find out it doesn't fit. Find out like there's just no space to clamp it or you can't get behind it to actually put the grip on. Any of that stuff is unfortunate. So in terms of space, you definitely do need a little more space than you think you probably do. But make sure you have enough space, not only behind wherever you're going to do the grips, where you're going to be standing, but make sure that you have a couple feet in front because, as I said, when you set that driver in, there's more shaft out in front and more, the head and shaft and all that than you kind of think. And it does kind of limit where you can set up your gripping kind of station. So space-wise, definitely make sure you have more space than you think in order to do this because, like I said, the last thing you want to do is go buy a bunch of stuff and get it all set up and then realize, half your bag doesn't fit and you can only do 6 iron and below because that's all the space you have. So definitely make sure you have some space. The second thing you're going to need is a workspace, like whether it's a workbench that's already been installed in a garage, whether it's something that you're going to build yourself out of, say, 2x4s and plywood or whatever, or if it's something where you've got like an old dining room table type thing where it's heavy. Make sure it's heavy because what you're going to find is as you grip, if you have like a really lightweight table and all that, it can move around when you go to slide a grip on, especially with something if you're putting a bunch of wraps on or whatever. You can actually push your table, your whatever forward. But if you've got a really heavy dining room table, something like that, where you do projects on that you don't mind drilling holes into, that you don't mind getting solvent on, that you don't mind getting tape residue, something that you don't mind kind of trashing. Don't do it on some, don't take your space and make it some, your actual dining room table or something like that. But if you've got a space, like a work top. So what I did originally, like I said, my first workbench, I went out, I bought some 2x4s, I bought some plywood. I literally just cut the plywood in half. I double layered it and I built like a little frame, 4 legs, slapped the plywood on top. And that was it. And I basically, slid that into a garage or built it in the garage, put it up against the wall. And that was it. That was my first workbench. I would not go that route only because the 4x4 kind of size, you're just not going to use like half the space. It's just not used for where you're going to grip. And even when you start getting to like the reshafting stuff and all that, the back half of that, if you do like a 4x4, the back half of that bench you'll never use. It's just too far away. Like, I mean, sure, you may throw like bottles of solvent or something there, but there's still so much wasted space that you just don't need. And I found that out, like I said, but I had, my carpentry skills were so limited that like cutting a sheet of plywood in half and putting it on there was about the extent of what I, knew to do. But I would say if you're going to build yourself a little workbench, For me, I found, especially over the years, and, between, my parents' house, a house that was rented, and then moving to a condo, and now in the house I'm in, the benches that I found the most success with typically are 4 feet long by about 2 feet deep. So those typically size-wise are about what works best, because at 2 feet deep, you're not wasting any space. You can still put solvent, you can do all your stuff, you can put stuff there, and it's out of the way, but you don't have a bunch of wasted space or space that it's hard to reach things and stuff like that. And then also, usually, depending on how much wood you're buying, you can sometimes get two workbenches out of you can get two workbenches out of a sheet of plywood, which is really nice. And if you have the space, you can make maybe a little L or put them side by side. But I found, for me, the 4 foot by 2 foot bench really does, for me, it worked the best. It was a good amount of space where you could do your work and, have your grips lined up, ready to go, have your tape, have your solvent, everything kind of right there. And you had enough space lengthwise to put a driver in or a club without going over. And also, like I said, it wasn't like a total waste of wood. And you could make two benches, for the sheet of plywood, and then buying 2x4s for the legs and supports. So for me, I think that's a great size. Again, depending on your space, I basically started with one 4x2 a workbench table. The original one I built, which actually I'm looking at in my basement because I used nails to put it together. So getting it out of my basement is like a two-man job, and I just haven't got it out of my basement yet. My other ones that I built, I use screws, so I could unscrew the top, take it off, walk it out, and then walk the legs out. But I'm an idiot and didn't do that with the first one I built. But like I said, 2 feet deep, 4 feet wide, a great bench. I think that's a great size. Like I said, you can put your stuff on there. It's not too big though, where you're taking up tons of space. You're not wasting a ton of space. And like I said, for me, I started out with one, and then when I moved into this house, I brought the one down here, and I used it for a while, and then I built actually two more later on, and I had two side-by-sides, or side-by-side lengthwise, so I had 8 total feet, and then I made a second one that ran parallel with it, or I'm sorry, perpendicular to it, so I had an L, and I had, the L. The one side was where my gripping was, and then I did kind of everything else, reshafting all that on the other section. But that was, after getting stuff down here, figuring out how I was going to use the space that I had, and I have a space that's like basically almost 10 feet wide by, say 7 feet deep. And I can go deeper than that, but there's a little kind of section off wall that was already there. And I basically built a little L to fit in there. But, like I said, starting out, you can just build, one little bench if you have nothing. But the other thing you can do too is if you have a workspace in your garage, that's great. I've seen it where you could use like an old dining room table. Like I said, with the dining room table, definitely make sure that it's heavy enough where it doesn't move, or if it's something that you can wedge against a wall, because when you put on grips, I'm telling you, it's going to move the table a little bit when you go to put them on, especially if it's something where it's a tight fit or you're putting multiple wraps on. Make it something where that workbench can either be mounted to the wall or it can be pushed up against another section of wall or something like that, somewhere where you can kind of really lock it down. You may even mount it to the floor with some little L brackets or something like that, depending on your space. But definitely make sure to look for a way to kind of secure that table, because when I was doing grips back in my old little condo, it was on kind of a linoleum type, old tile basement floor, and I didn't have it mounted to anything. And I even had my stamping table, my really heavy metal stamping table piece on there. And every once in a while you'd get a grip, especially if it was cold out, whatever, it was hard to put on, and it would almost start pushing the table, and it was just one of those, it just made the job harder. So workspace is one. Definitely make sure you have, like I said, enough space. If you need to build yourself a table, and unfortunately nowadays wood is stupid expensive, so the cost now compared to when I started, you could build a table for nothing. Now it's at least a somewhat substantial part of your part of your shop. But your workspace, you have some options. Like I said, you can even find an old dining room table somewhere. Maybe Facebook Marketplace, someone's giving away an old heavy oak wood table, and if it fits in your space, great, man. Grab it, whatever, and and get ready to do some stuff. So like I said, just don't do it on a surface that you actually care about, because it's probably going to get fairly destroyed. And then when it comes to, once you get your space and you get that set up and you get your, workbench or whatever, surface you're going to work on into that space, next is, what do you need to actually regrip? And to actually regrip, we're going to get into some of what you actually need, which isn't a whole lot. But we'll start off kind of with what tools you need. But before that, Superstroke is giveaway city this holiday season. If you go follow Superstroke on Instagram, and that's at Superstroke Golf, all one word, for details and to enter to win. They're going to have putters, staff bags, autographed grips from PGA Tour winners, and more all up for grabs this season. So don't let the holiday season pass you by without checking out Superstroke's holiday giveaway going on now, starting basically today. And then remember, follow at Superstroke Golf on Instagram for your chance to win, and good luck. So it's going to be pretty exciting. I can't wait to see what they put up there because, those guys do work with a lot of big pros, and they should already have some pretty cool stuff to win. So check that out when you get a chance. And let's get into the tools that you need, because if you're starting from nothing, and again, everybody's going to start a little differently. If you're starting from absolute nothing, you're probably looking at around, to get into regripping, minus the grips, like without grips, if you just need the stuff to put a grip on, you're probably going to look around $100 is what it's going to cost you in terms of tools and supplies. Assuming that you have a workspace already set up, whatever that cost is. But if you have that, once you have a space, you have a workspace to go, it's going to be around $100 to get going with, a basic regrip setup. You could do it a little cheaper. You could probably do it for $80. But I'm going to throw in a one piece that's like $20 that I think is useful. I think it'll save you some money in the long run, but you don't necessarily need it. I didn't start off with one. But anyway, the first thing you're going to need is a vise. And some people may have vices. Like I said, if your garage, you have a vise set up somewhere because you do other things, and you do other things, you have other hobbies and all that. But you need a benchtop vise, and like mine, I have two of them. I think they're Irwin brand, which isn't anything fancy, from Lowe's, and I think they're basically, I think they're 4 or 4.5 inch vices. And you don't need anything huge. You don't need anything crazy. You don't need anything that's going to you're going to be able to forge, a sword on or anything like that. I mean, just, you need a vise that can be basically screwed down or bolted down into your workspace so it doesn't move. And it's, and that's about it. I mean, I would not go with, I know there's some out there that have little excuse me, that have little clamps that you can clamp it onto your workspace and then take it back off. Personally, I wouldn't go that route. I just don't think they're secure enough. And the forces that you're putting on, if you were just going straight down onto the vise, I think, okay, that's fine, but you're putting an actual side load on the vise, and I don't think those hold on that great. So I would personally recommend going something like a 4.5 inch vise. Like I said, from Lowe's, which is the ones I have. I have two of them, but you only need one. They're like $40, $40 to $50. 4.5 inches is, perfect size to fit a shaft clamp in and everything. You could even go, if you wanted to go a little bigger, fine. If they have something a little smaller than that, it'll work. But I think the 4.5 or 4 inch one is pretty much perfect in terms of the clamp size. It's not insane powerful, so you're not going to be crushing stuff. But it's big enough also where you're going to, the shaft clamps, what you're going to put that club in, is going to fit in there really well. It's long enough that you can adjust it. I think size-wise, it just fits really well. It's not overly huge, so when you have it on your workspace, it doesn't take up a ton of space. And they're pretty easy to mount. So, like I said, I've been really successful. Like I said, I think mine are 4.5 inch. I think looking at Lowe's website, it's a 4.5 inch cast iron light duty workshop vise. So I'm pretty sure what I have two of. And they work great. I've had the one for, I don't even know, probably 15 years. And then I bought another one when I moved into this house. I've had another one about 4 years or so. And like I said, they've been perfect. But I think that 4.5 inch or 4 inch, right around that, it doesn't have to be an Irwin brand, wherever, whether you get it from a Home Depot, a Lowe's, or whatever's closest to you. But like I said, that like 4.5 inch vise that can be actually bolted down to your workspace is what I would recommend. And like I said, it's just going to be solid. It's not going to have a ton of play. You're not going to worry about, is the thing clamped on tight enough to my workspace to push a grip on, all that stuff. You don't have to worry about it. It's locked in. It's solid. You get a grip on. So I would go that route. Get yourself a couple bolts or lag screws, whatever, to mount it to your bench. Mine are actually put in with actual bolts. So I drill 4 holes, drop in some bolts. I have a couple of washers and nuts on the bottom, put them in there. So I say by the time you buy that with some hardware, like I said, you're looking at like $45-50. And basically mount it to your bench. And usually you're going to mount it to probably one of the corners of the bench. Mine's kind of in the front corner, just because you're going to be able to, it's going to be the easiest probably access-wise to put on your, to put your club in. And also, depending on how you mount it in your space, you have to worry about that you actually have to tighten and untighten the vise. So if you just put it in the middle of the bench, you're not going to be able to tighten it really easily. So think about that as well. I actually found out with my new setup that I've actually got drawers now, and everything opens below, and the vise, when you spin it, the handle slides back and forth. It slides down vertically, and it actually stops you from opening the drawers, which I never thought of. But it's actually all right. I figured out one of the ones I mounted it so if you drop the handle down, it actually fits right in between 2 drawers. So the 2 drawers slide right by it. And then the other one, I'm just going to have to remember to kind of keep it in a horizontal position, and it won't affect my drawer. But definitely think about when you're mounting that vise where you're going to mount it to, because you do have to like tighten and untighten it, and you'll be doing that quite a bit. So make sure that that whole mechanism, that handle, is not interrupted. But like I said, hardware and a vise, you're looking at about $50. Maybe a little bit less, whatever. Maybe you find some holiday deal. But like I said, 4.5 inch or 4 inch bench mounted vise is the way to go. Don't do anything that has to be, clamped onto a table. Just bolt it onto your table. It's permanent. It's there. You're done. So once you get that set up, then really, what you need is a rubber shaft clamp. So basically, if you go on Golf Works, Golf WORKS, no affiliation with us, with WRX, but if you go to Golf Works, this is where I typically get a lot of my stuff, just because it's pretty quick. They have just about everything, and their prices are usually pretty good. But you can go to your local Golf Galaxy. They have stuff as well. But you're looking for a rubber shaft clamp or gripping clamp, whatever they want to call it. It's basically a piece of rubber, a thick piece of rubber that kind of looks like a square, and then one side is open, and it's got a little cutout for a shaft, like a whole kind of, a cylinder kind of cut out of it. And you basically snap it on the shaft, you put it in the vise, and you tighten it down to hold it in place. I will give you one piece of warning. Be careful of how tight you make that, especially with graphite shafts. I did, unfortunately, when I was doing grips in my infancy, threw one in there on a driver that I had never hit before. I literally ordered a Callaway, I think it was a Diablo Octane Tour, and with an Autola Prototype 60, tossed it in there, started tightening it down, didn't pay attention, snap, and actually cracked it right on the top. And that was shot. So I had to pull the shaft. Never even hit it. Pulled the shaft. Head was still in plastic. I was just changing the grip because for whatever reason I was playing grips that Callaway didn't offer. Snap the shaft. So be careful when putting that stuff in there. You want it tight enough where it's secure, but you also don't want to crank it down where you're going to risk breaking a graphite shaft. Steel shafts are pretty safe. You can go a little harder on those, but graphite, especially if they're lightweight graphite, be a little more careful. But that shaft clamp will basically fit into your vise. You'll tighten it down, and that holds your club in place. The other thing you're going to need, which is kind of basic stuff, you're going to need, grip solvent. I just use the Golf Works grip solvent. I know they make a couple versions. I just use their, I guess it's called Pro Blend. I don't know what's pro about it, but it's just grip solvent. Some people use mineral spirits. I've heard people using kerosene or something like that, or whatever. So I wouldn't recommend any of that. Mineral spirits, work fine. Like I said, I've been using the Golf Works solvent. I think it keeps that tape really slick. For a little bit longer. It does have a little more longer drying time, but I think that's fine because it makes grips, pretty easy to get on, especially if you're starting out, or you're, working with some tougher grips. But that is, the solvent I use. You can get a quart of that for like $9. That shaft clamp's like $4. You may be able to find it cheaper somewhere else. But like I said, solvent and a shaft clamp is like, $12. And then you need a roll of tape. You can buy strips of tape as well. I'd say just get a roll, because then you can put on however much you want. You can cut it. It's whatever length that your grip is. If you're playing something, a grip that's a little shorter or a little longer, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can, put on your own and cut it off. And tape, like I said, same thing. I use the GolfWorks, standard grip tape. I use the 2-inch stuff, because honestly, the 2-inch stuff, you put a strip on, you can wrap it around the whole shaft, and you're done. I don't mess with like trying to do the little spiral, tape job or anything like that. I put on one full piece, wrap it around the shaft, and done. So I usually buy the biggest one they have, which is I think 2-inch wide, and it's 36 yards. And you go through it fairly quickly, especially if you're going to use that for like say build up. But you can go through it pretty quick if you're doing a lot of regripping. But that's like $11-12, something like that, $10, something like that on GolfWorks. Again, you can get this stuff at like a Golf Galaxy. I was in Golf Galaxy the other day, and they had all this stuff sitting right there that you could buy as well. So I wanted to get some grips, and thanks to my boys there, because they had everything. It was crazy. They had like every grip, but they had all that, the tape, the solvent, all that stuff there. So if you needed it, you had it. So you need tape. Like I said, I go with the 2-inch tape. I think it's just easier, and then also you'll need a utility knife or two. I'm going to say to go with 2 utility knives, and the reason being is that there's good reason for both. The first one is a utility knife with a standard blade for like cutting the tape. I mean, you could have scissors as well, if you want to have a pair of scissors at home. But cutting the tape, a standard, regular, sharp, pointed blade. Cut the tape once put it on the shaft. Once you get it to length, cut it. And it's really easy to kind of do that. And then a hook blade, a knife with a hook blade. So they make blades that have a little hook. And for cutting grips off, that's what you want to use, because there's nothing there that will damage, like especially a graphite shaft. If you use a pointed standard utility knife blade, you try to cut off a grip off a graphite shaft, there's a real possibility risk of that knife going too deep, getting into the graphite and cutting up the shaft a little bit, and then you've got a weakened shaft, and eventually it could break, down the road. So you could have one knife and you could switch blades. You can put in the hook blade, cut all the grips off, and then take the knife off and put in the regular blade for cutting tape. A utility knife's not that expensive, so why not just get 2? Get 2, get some regular standard blades, and get some hook blades. That should cost you around $10. You don't have to do anything fancy. Mine are like super cheap. Cheapest thing they got in like a Lowe's or Home Depot. You can order them on GolfWorks as well. I think one knife with both blades is like $6. Like I said, I would get 2. If you get one, you're just gonna get sick of changing the blades. Let's be honest. It's just one of those things where you're not gonna want it. You're just gonna want both knives there. Use one to cut the grips off. Use another one to cut tape and other things with it. But you need at least one utility knife with 2 different blades. And like I said, you need the hook blade for removing grips, or else you're going to risk damaging some graphite shafts. So take the time, get some hook blades, and you'll be much safer. And then you get to the kind of the optional piece, or I think optional piece, which is GolfWorks sells a solvent catch pan. So it's a little kind of triangular. It's a rectangle, but it's triangular, and it's basically a little bucket with a spout that you put a hose onto that you can catch your solvent, and it can mount right to the side of your workbench. I've got mine. I used to not have one. It's like a $20 thing. It comes with like the mounting hardware, the hose, all that jazz. But it does save the solvent. So what you can do is if you have another little bottle, you put it at the end of the hose, it'll catch all the solvent as you're gripping, and then you can pour it back into your bottle you're using to, or whatever bottle or whatever you're using to put the solvent on the grip tape. But it also stops it from going all over your floor. When I first started, I would just drop solvent on the floor. I was in a garage. I didn't care. It evaporates really quickly. And I would just drop it on the floor, and I would just have to buy new solvent somewhat regularly. And I think this thing here has saved a ton of money when it comes to solvent. you don't go through that much solvent after that. Like, I mean, it really takes, depending on how many grips you're going, it's going to take a while before you, actually need more solvent, just because this thing catches it and kind of recycles it back in, and you basically just pour it back and use it again, and it works really well. I think it's a good $20 invested there. Like I said, you don't need it. I used to just buy bottles of solvent, put it on there, it fell on the floor, it evaporated. When the solvent was gone, I'd go buy more, and that was just how I did it. And now I've, like I said, I've got this because I'm inside, I'm on a carpeted floor, and I don't want to just dump solvent all over. But I have done a few jobs lately, or not lately, recently, that I didn't have a choice. We were out in the garage, and I brought some stuff over, and we just did some grips and burned through some solvent, just dropping it on the floor. It works fine. But like I said, having that catch pad really does help. And really, other than buying some grips, that is all you need. So like I said, for basically about $100, assuming you have a workbench and a workbench or a workspace, like I said, a vise, a rubber shaft clamp, some utility knives, solvent, tape, and like I said, that catch pan, you're basically ready to grip. And it's really not a hard thing to do. I mean, like I said, you're going to cut the old grip off, clean off all the tape and everything like that, which can be a total pain in the butt. But I would say, especially if it's something older, definitely get all the tape off if you can. And then it's a matter of just putting a piece of tape on, wrapping it around the shaft, make sure it's as smooth as possible, and then pouring the little solvent in the grip, pouring some solvent on the tape that's on the shaft. Shake the old grip to get the solvent all on the inside of the grip, and then pour that excess on the tape again, and then in one quick motion, slide that grip right on there. Just start from the bottom, kind of flip it up over the shaft and push it on, and kind of do it all one smooth, quick motion, and you should be good to go. And then make sure it's straight, set it aside for maybe 15 minutes, half hour, and you should be ready to hit that club. So like I said, that's kind of the first part of this. I'll probably do a little bit more about it. I'll get some pictures of my kind of new shop as well for IG. But yeah, like I said, for starting your own gripping thing, like I said, I get a lot of questions about starting off. Hopefully this helps. Like I said, check out your local Golf Galaxy. Check out golfworks.com, which is golf, WORKS. There's tons of other places that you can get this equipment, but those are the basic tools you need wherever you get them from. But if you have a workspace, have a workbench, you're probably looking at about $100 to get everything started and everything rolling. So nothing crazy. And once you get that set up, I mean, that should last you, other than tape and solvent, the rest should last you forever. I mean, you'll never, I don't think, wear out a catch pan or wear out a vise or anything like that. So the rest of it, you should be, good and have it for years. Like I said, I know my one vise is probably 15 years old. My catch pan is at least 6 years old or 5 years old. The other, I mean, that stuff just doesn't wear out. So once you have it, you're good, and you can do your own grips for the rest of the time you golf. Or heck, you might be able to charge a couple buddies a few bucks, or a 6-pack of beer, and make a little living on the side doing some grips for some buddies, or people you play golf with. So if you have any questions, anything like that, hit me up on Instagram at Club Junkie Pod. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, anything like that. And like I said, you may be able to find this stuff cheaper or more, whatever, but that's kind of a baseline price. So don't hold me over the coals if for some reason yours is a little more or a little less or whatever. This is just kind of me jumping online real quick and looking at kind of what stuff costs at the moment. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I've got for this episode. Before I go though, I just want to let you know, phenomenal deal for the holidays. Most golfers don't practice effectively because they don't have access to meaningful data and quality feedback. The Rapsodo mobile launch monitor helps solve that problem by providing immediate feedback on every shot in the form of ball flight data, video playback, and even a shot tracer. It has been rated the most accurate personal launch monitor on the market and is within 2% accuracy of units costing over $20,000. Rapsodo is offering Golf WRX listeners a special holiday deal, $100 off an MLM, plus a free 30-day premium subscription trial when using code WRX at checkout. Go to rapsodo.com/WRX to learn more about this award-winning launch monitor and how it can improve your golf game. I've got one. It works really well. It's super consistent. It's super easy to use. They've been adding a ton of features into the software. over the past year and going forward. I mean, they've hinted to me about some cool stuff that's even coming down the road. So it's a pretty cool unit, and $100 off is tough to beat. So check out that deal. Like I said, go to rapsodo.com/WRX, code WRX at checkout. But check that out. Like I said, if you're looking to do something over the winter and get yourself kind of a personal launch monitor, it works indoors, it works outdoors. So, go work on your game and get some data. Like I said, I think it's a great thing to do, like, gapping. If you're going to do some iron maintenance, do some bending, stuff like that, some loft changing. It's a great tool to go through, gap your whole bag, figure out where you may need to adjust some lofts and things like that. So anyway, it's all I got this week. Again, like I said, we might do some more stuff this winter about shop setups and things like that. If you're interested in it, let me know that you are. If not, hey, maybe I can stop doing it. I understand not everybody's into it. But anyway, hopefully you guys have a good week. Hope you have a good rest of the weekend. Get your holiday shopping done. And we'll talk to you next week.